Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. In this video I want to talk about something that I get asked a lot actually, and that is from people beginning their interest in the saber world, lightsabers, dueling, that kind of thing. They're always asking me, what are your recommendations for which lightsaber to get, okay? Which hilt, which blades, do you prefer straight hilt over, completely forgot what they call them now. Choke points, that's what it is. Okay, so that's the kind of thing I'm going to get into in this video, is how to pick, a hilt, how to pick a blade, what things to consider when you're ordering that kind of thing. I might even talk about, which companies I prefer, that kind of thing. So yeah, again, this is something that a lot of people still have questions about, particularly people that are just getting into this hobby and they don't really know much about it. So I'll start with the most fun piece of the saber, and that's the hilt. I get all my sabers, I don't have that many, but I get all of mine from Ultra Sabers. There's God knows how many saber companies out there now. There's obviously Ultra Sabers, Saber Forge is another one. There's Vader's Vault, Master Sabers. There's just a whole bunch of them. And when you're first picking which one to go with, there's a few things you want to consider. One is you kind of want to do your research on how reputable the company is, because there's some sabersmiths out there that, they try to take advantage of people. They make shoddy work. And this isn't from my experience, this is from other people I've talked to that they've ordered through some companies, and they've gotten less than satisfactory results with their purchase. So that's kind of something you have to research, kind of get a feel for which company you like, which one has the designs you like. In terms of the actual hilt itself, again, there's many factors to consider. One of which is, will you be customizing your saber or not? If not, and if you have the money, you can go with something expensive. Like I know with Ultra Sabers, they have things like the Graflex, which is basically Anakin's trilogy lightsaber. That's a very popular one. Pretty much anything that has a very distinctive design to it, something that's not plain, something that's not too fancy. If you want to do your own custom work to it, my personal recommendation would be to go with something simple like this. This is an Ultra Saber Initiate Aeon, I believe it is. This came as a staff, but you can actually use it as a single weapon. And something like this, it's very basic. It doesn't have a lot of features to it, but you can customize the crap out of this if you wanted to. A lot of people add those black O-rings. A lot of people made draped cloth over it to hang down. Some people even put jewelry on it that hangs down. You can really customize a simple hilt, whereas a more something like the Graflex, you can only do so much with it. So pretty much anything, you want to look at design first. What catches your eye, what doesn't catch your eye, and that'll kind of give you ideas of where you want to take the hilt in the future. So if you do want to do any custom work, or you want other people to do custom work for you, that's something to consider with just a basic design. Next thing to consider is whether to go with a straight hilt or one with grip points like this one here does. Straight hilt would be, again, I only have a reference of Ultra Sabers because that's all I ever buy. I haven't really dabbled in any of the others, but I know people that have. And you can get a straight hilt from a lot of different companies. Something like this, where it's just a straight shaft of metal. It doesn't have any choke points on it. It's just straight. These are really good, again, for customizing. You don't get a lot of feedback on a straight hilt, I will say. Whereas one with choke points, as soon as you grab it, you know where your hand is on the hilt. So if you're just beginning to get into the saber world and you want something that's easy to mess around with, easy to kind of flourish, I would always recommend something with choke points. The Catalyst from Ultra Sabers is a good one, the Liberator, and again, any of the Aeons or the Phantoms are a good choice because they actually give you feedback on where your hand is on the hilt. You know, I could grab this thing blind and know exactly where my hand is. Whereas this, you know, aside from the activator switch, it feels the exact same the entire length of the hilt. So that's kind of one thing to consider. Another thing is the grooves in these. I will say when I first got this one, this is the dark standard issue. It came as a staff. I shredded my hand on these grooves. They've kind of dulled down now a bit, but you know, when I was first flourishing this thing, I was cutting my hand to shreds, and I actually had to wear gloves when practicing with this because these grooves were actually so deep in there. So again, that's another thing to consider. Again, you will get used to that the more you practice with it, but it is just another element to consider. Another thing is, if you order a saber as a staff, like I did with this one, this is the dark standard issue, you actually get 3 sabers in one. You get a staff, you can pull these apart and use it as a single saber, or you can actually pull this apart and use it as double sabers. So you're actually getting more bang for your buck if you do a staff. Again, you don't get a nice of a design. This is pretty simple. It's you know, it is what it is basically. Again, you can customize something like this, and it does give you that added variability with if you want to go staff, double, or single saber. Okay. So that's really all there is in the way of hilts. Again, if you're just beginning to get into this hobby, I would recommend something with choke points on it, like I showed you on the other one, because that does give you more feedback on where you're gripping the hilt, and it does make flourishing a little bit easier. Not by much, but it does. And then once you get used to something like that, then you can move on to something like this. And I guess another factor, obviously, to consider is budget. You know, something like this that I ordered as a staff, you'd be looking somewhere in the range of $250. Whereas, you know, if you were to go with something basic like this, just as a single saber, you know, you may only be looking at maybe $100 or less. So that would be in the terms of like a simple hilt, and something more fancy, something with actual characteristics on it. You know, you could be getting up into the 300, 400 range, especially if you add sound. The ones I have they don't have sound, but they do have the capability to add sound. So, and I will make one quick comment about sound itself. It's both good and bad. It's not having it is good because you can actually turn it on in the middle of the night and not wake anybody up, because these are very loud when you turn them on. So that's a good thing, but the bad thing is, of course, you don't have sound. And I know how much people like to customize the sounds, they like to add new sound fonts, that kind of thing. So that's another factor to consider. So that's pretty much in the way of hilts. The way of blades, the blades really depend on what kind of usage you're going to see out of the saber. If you're going to be dueling a lot, if you're going to be like really heavy hitting, sparring with people, you definitely want a heavy grade blade. It doesn't matter where you get blades from, you want a heavy grade blade. And I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this, but if you can see that there, I don't know if the camera's in focus or not, but you can see the thickness on the wall there. It's very thick, as opposed to a mid-grade blade where, you know, it's very thin. You can get away with dueling with a mid-grade blade, but there is more of a risk of the tip flying off, the sheet, the polycarbonate sheet inside crinkling, and even breaking the blade. I know I had a mid-grade initiate blade once that, you know, I dropped it on a rock and the thing actually broke the tip off, like completely broke it. So if you are going to be doing any kind of sparring with the saber, if you're going to be, you know, practicing with people, I would definitely recommend a heavy grade blade. Now for show, you can get away with a mid-grade blade, because if you're not going to be hitting it against anything or against another saber, mid-grade is the way to go. Okay. Another thing to consider with blades is the length. And again, this is more personal preference. I prefer initiate blades just because you know, they're shorter, so therefore they're lighter, and they're easier to flourish, in my opinion. They give you a good amount of space to use, whereas if you use something like this is a 32 inch. You know, if you're practicing in your room and you have, you know, close walls around you, you have to be more conscious of your surroundings, especially if you have like bookcases, pets, you know. You have to be more conscious of spinning something like this as opposed to an initiate blade. This is 24 inches. You know, you have more room to maneuver around, okay? So, again, that's more of a personal preference. 32 inches, anywhere between 28 and 32 inches is kind of the sweet spot of a blade. That's kind of the ones you see typically. You can get them even longer, like up to 40 inches, but then you're really getting cumbersome with it, and you're really limiting your space unless you're outdoors. But again, my recommendation if you're just beginning would be either a 24 inch initiate blade or a 32, 30, somewhere in that range, something like that. Then, once you consider that, then you get into the types of blades, like the look of the blade. There's something like this, you can see that silver lining inside. That is, I guess what you'd call a standard blade. These are really good for show. They're really good for cosplayers who like to cosplay as Jedi and Sith. These are really good for showrooms because they have that shine to them. They have that chrome look. As opposed to something like this. This is, I believe it's a white polycarbonate blade. Sabers, they call these ultra edge blades because the color goes all the way to the edge on these. These don't look as good if you're just showing the blade or just walking around with the blade. They do show better color. I mean, they do carry color more out to the edge, which is why Ultra Sabers calls them the ultra edge blade. So that's the kind of thing that you would get into with appearance. Again, if you're going to be outdoors, if you're going to be just walking around with the blade in costume, I would recommend going with that silver finish. If you're going to be filming at night, if you're going to be sparring at night in demos or whatever, I might recommend this white polycarbonate. Okay. And one final thing I will say about the blades is when you turn the saber on, these different looks will determine kind of the look of the saber itself. Like I said, this is an ultra edge blade, so the light is carried all the way to the edge of the blade, which makes it look good. It's more of a prequels look, the prequels trilogy look, as opposed to the silver finish where you get kind of more of that light in a tube effect, and that's more original trilogy look. So that's another thing to consider if you want more of that A New Hope, Empire look. I would go with these. If you want more of that trilogy look, that prequels look, then I would go with the white polycarbonate. Alright, so that's kind of my rundown on recommendations for people just getting into this hobby. Again, the most important thing is to do your homework, kind of get a feel for what companies are out there, what they stand for, look at reviews of people that have them, see what they say, if they've had any problems with them, if they've sent them back a lot. That'll kind of give you a feel for, you know, what company to go with. Obviously, you can go with whatever design that you like. Another good place is the Custom Saber Shop, where you can actually design your own saber and then assemble it with the parts that come to you. So again, there's a lot of companies out there. A lot of them stand for different things. A lot of them, some of them are better than others, I will say, but I'm not going to name names here. That's kind of research that you have to do on your own. I would always recommend Ultra Sabers. They make some good products. So hopefully that's given some people some ideas of some things to consider when they're getting a hilt, when they're getting a blade, the length of the saber they want, that kind of thing. Obviously, if you have any questions, just comment and let me know. All right? Thanks for watching. You guys have a good one.